hurting him physically. So the children are traumatized, and it's going to be a long, slow process. Some prisoners of war never recovered from the atrocities dealt to them by the Japanese or the Nazis, and these children have suffered horrendous experiences. So there's the trauma. The other thing is, the family have never said this to me, but my understanding is that they have had a whisper in their ear, do not let the children speak or you will lose them, or they could have an accident. And the third issue, I believe, is that the family would be damned if they did and damned if they don't. If they put the children into a press conference, I think that people would say, oh, this is the sheer exploitation of those children. But then again, there are journalists who say, why aren't we allowed to speak to the children? They are children at the end of the day, and I think there isn't a parent out there who would do anything, or a guardian who would do, to protect their children. However, I was in Karachi 3 weeks ago, and Aafia Siddiqui spoke at a rally. He asked his aunt if he could, and he spoke at a rally, and he asked people, please help me get my mother back, because and this rally in Karachi wasn't just Muslims. Christians were there as well. People of faith and no faith see Aafia as an emblem of everything that is rotten and rancid about America's war on terror. Now, Obama might have dropped the name war on terror, but it's still going on. And as long as Aafia is held in the US, there will be demonstrations, there will be direct action. Hopefully it will be peaceful. This is what Aafia herself said in court: I do not want any violence in my name.
So, Dr. Aafia, we know that no militancy charges or no terrorism charges have been pressed against Dr. Aafia. Then still, why in your opinion Dr. Aafia has not been allowed by the Americans or by her captors to speak to the media?
Again, I have no idea of the inner workings of the US. I wish I did, but it all goes back to the kidnap and rendition of 3 children, and even the US knows that it cannot. I think that there is somebody very, very high up in because he knows that if all of this comes out,
What would you say about the judgment of American court on Dr. Aafia's case? How do you see American justice system, which American government brag about so proudly?
Well, Judge Richard Berman, who oversaw the whole trial, is a lawbreaker, not a lawmaker. He allowed that trial to go ahead in the full knowledge that this woman had been denied the Vienna Conventions. He allowed the trial to go ahead in the full knowledge that Aafia had been renditioned. There was no formal extradition, so she was presented to the court illegally. She is the first civilian to have been put into a criminal court in the war on terror. None of the others have. They've all ended up in Guantanamo and then later released. She is the only one to have been put through a civilian court. Furthermore, the alleged crime was committed in Afghanistan. She is a Pakistani citizen. What on earth was he thinking of, allowing that trial to go ahead in his court?
Well,
he is the one who should be, standing facing charges. And to give 86 years just shows the crass stupidity of this man, because what he has done, he has lit a touch paper which will send a flame right across the world, and it's started already. NATO supply lines are being burned, are being attacked. There are demonstrations, there are rallies. Ordinary people will do whatever they can because of that. All that stupid man had to do, if he'd given her a 10-year sentence, which would have been horrendous anyway, if he'd given her a 10-year sentence, it would have taken the wind out of the sails of the campaigners. If he had given her a life sentence, it would have diffused the situation, because nobody really understands what a life sentence is. But to give her 86 years was the most stupid thing. And as I say, I go back to Sir Winston Churchill's quote about the Americans always do the wrong things first, but eventually they get it right. Well, I think the time has come now for some common sense, some humility from the Americans to return Aafia to her country.
The leader of, speaking of that, when you mentioned that Guantanamo detainees have been released, the leader of Taliban, ambassador, who was ambassador to Pakistan, and that was also on your website, YvoneRidley.org, that Mullah Abdul Salim Zaif was released from Guantanamo in 2005. And in July 2010, UN struck out his name from the terrorist list as well. Then why not Dr. Aafia could have been let go on humanitarian grounds, considering that she has three very young children to take care of?
Because, again, the Pakistani government did not officially ask for her repatriation.
How do you see the role of United Nations in this whole case?
Oh, the United Nations is useless, absolutely useless. It is an organisation without teeth, which is run by the Americans, and they will only react if they're told to by the Americans. Aafia will get out through people power.
You have mentioned quite a number of times in our talk right now that ordinary people have been taking it onto the streets for the release of Dr. Aafia. But why are world's other human rights activists and feminists are quiet, especially in Pakistan? Like, I can name a lot of them, but I don't want to name them.
No, well, I'll tell you exactly why it is, and it's very, very sad. When pictures of Aafia wearing her graduation clothes, and her head was uncovered, she was wearing a mortar for her graduation ceremony from MIT. All sorts of human rights groups and feminist groups were out there on the front line saying, oh, this is terrible, let's do something to bring this woman back. And then as soon as the pictures of her as a covered, pious, observant, practicing Muslim came out, it was like, yeah, well, maybe not. And they disappeared and peeled away. And here is a woman who is being punished for her piety.
So when a nun covers her head, it's religion, and when a Muslim covers her head, it's more of an oppression. Is that? Am I getting you right?
Because she is a Hafiz, she's learned the Holy Quran by heart. These left-wing leaning groups, these secularists, the Dawkinites, the Hawkinites, the Darwinites, the feminist groups, they just switched off completely. Anything to do with Islam.
How should Dr. Faisal Siddiqui and other Dr. Aafia sympathizers can really raise an effective campaign for the return of Dr. Aafia from now point on?
We just have to step up the campaign and be very robust and forthright in what we're doing, without fear, and go for direct action, but in a peaceful way. I have suggested before, the way to hurt the Americans is to block the NATO supply lines into Afghanistan. But what I was suggesting was sit in the road. 40, 50 people can do it very easily. And these sort of actions, it's the right of people to demonstrate peacefully, to make their point heard. And